Do you want to guest speak on podcasts? Well, I have the easiest, best, most amazing email guesting request template that's almost too easy and too good to be true. But it is true. I've started sending out this email. I'm going to tell you exactly what it is and how I came across it. And it is so good. The email guest request template that's too good to be true because it's so simple. Almost too good to be true because it's so simple. And you can start sending it out now, not tomorrow, but now, so that you can start getting on podcasts and building your influence, your brand, your income.
You know when someone is selling from stage and at the end the audience gets up and rushes to the back of the room to buy? That's a table rush. My name is Mischa Z, and the Table Rush Talk Show is all about bringing you the tools, strategies, and tactics that you can use to grow your audience and inspire them to buy.
Okay, I tried to have a good hook on that intro. How'd I do? I mean, come on, send me an email. Let me know how I did. Did that intro get you? So check it out. I have been sending podcast guest requests for myself, wanting to guest speak on podcasts. So I've been sending email guest speaking requests to podcasts, and sometimes you can send out a lot before you get any engagement, and a frustrating amount you can send out till you start getting engagement. And then all of a sudden, a gentleman that I'm going to partner with, I've been having conversations with him about guest speaking on podcasts, and we're going to partner up and do some work together. And he's been in the guest speaking arena for many years, and not only to guest speak on podcasts, but to guest speak on stages, to guest speak at corporations and companies and associations. All those corporations, associations, companies, big and small, want guest speakers to educate their employees, to motivate their employees. So it's not just podcasts, but he's been doing this for quite a while. He's very good at it. And so, he's been helping me. I'm going to be vulnerable here. Yes. And say, he's taught me some things of late that are awesome. And so check it out. Most people, if you Google podcast guesting and you find templates on how to send an email to guest speak on a podcast, they're usually very complex. They are very complex email templates, and it's usually, you've got to go into some sort of a sentence or two or three about how you love their show, and you found their show, and this is my favorite episode, and perhaps I've even given you a review, and so you need to prove that, right? And then you go into, and it's some version of this, and usually it can be in varying order, but they all have the same sort of bullet points that you need to put on there. Another one would be, I'll make sure to promote your show, and here's how I'm going to promote your show. So you have the promote your show section. And then you also have the section of this is what I'm going to talk about, right? These are all the things I can talk about. So some of the people out there will recommend that you give a few topical ideas, right? And perhaps even the name of the show, of the episode. And then there'll be the, here's all my most recent shows that I've been on section. And then, here's the section where you talk about what you do and how great you are and the audience you help and all these things, right? That about you section. And again, these emails all have some order of these topics, right? And then there's the salutation or the sign off, right? Hey, thank you. Look forward to your response. And some of them will even have, here's a booking link. Some of them will be even more extensive. But again, some version of that. And then also some version of making all those sections as short and concise as possible, right? And so you end up with a fairly comprehensive email guesting request. And then if you have attachments too, some people will like, hey, put your podcast bio, your one sheet, they call it, put your one sheet on there as an attachment. Put the show flow as an attachment. And it can take some work. And if you have an assistant doing it, obviously that makes it easier, but it still takes work finding podcasts. If you're being authentic about listening to the episodes, that you're saying how great they were, that you listened to their podcast, well, that takes even more work. And the more data fields that you have to populate, the more work it takes. And the more you have to validate. So no matter how automated it is, you got to validate data. You got to validate those. What do they call them? Those, the pre-filled sections, right? No, it's not the pre-filled section. It's the fields that auto-populate, right? So, podcast show, podcast host, podcast episodes, podcast topics, anything that you're customizing, that data needs to be validated, preferably. Anyway, I don't mean to go too deep on this, but I'm just gonna suffice it to say that some of the biggest podcast people who are telling you to go guest speak on podcasts and are perhaps teaching you how to podcast and do all this, have this common email template. And so my new friend who we're partnering up, Ron is his name, Ron Story. Oh my gosh, he's so smart. And he says, here you go. Here's the template to use that everybody fights him on, but it is the template to use. Now, I'm a marketer. I've been marketing for lots of years, and I was marketing for 15 years in home loans, generating leads for myself and my team and other industries, acting as a salesman before that, generating leads. But by the time I hit mortgages, I was like, if you have something that works and you can cut cut down the speed. You can increase my speed of learning, and I can just borrow what you've used. Well, let's do it, right? So when I hit mortgages where, oh my gosh, I was insanely successful for 15 years, man, I was like, show me what works. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. And so, if I'd find the data and come up with email templates, and whenever I could, I would, use somebody's tricks and tips. Same thing with whatever scripts, or my mentors in the loan business were like, here's what you say and when you say it. And so it's easy for me to say okay most of the time. Like, what's the script that I use? So Ron says, here it is. And he goes, he gives me the impression that he'll be shocked if I use it. So the subject line is simply podcast guests. That's the subject line of your email. And then the email says, Sarah, I found your podcast name, podcast, and you have a great show. Are you looking for an interesting guest to be on the show? If so, what are the next steps? ? Thanks. And then you sign off, Mischa. Did you catch that? How easy and simple that is? So it's the podcaster's name. In this case, her name was Sarah. I wanted to follow up on an email. That's the reply. If nobody, that's the email number 2. If they don't respond to email number 1, which I'll do another episode on that. That'll be my next episode. What's email 2 look like if there's no response? So again, the email is podcast host name, in this case, Sarah. I found your Marketing with Empathy podcast, and you have a great show. Are you looking for an interesting guest to be on the show? ? If so, what are the next steps? ? Thanks, Mischa. Simple as that. That's the email. And he said people who are reading the emails, they're usually on their phone. Realistically, you got to cut to the chase. Like, ask him if they're taking guests. Keep it as simple as that. Create the engagement. And so, oh my gosh, I spent so much time using these other templates. These big templates where you, like I said, you have your 5 or 6 or 7 sections, some version of that, and you send it out. And a lot of times they just go into the void, so you get no engagement. And that little email that I just told you right there, so simple, I started using it, and I am getting a ton of engagement. And what do I mean when I say engagement? That means I get a reply that says no. We're not taking guests. But guess what? Ron gave me how you respond to that, and I'll tell you that in the next episode, and it is awesome. Or they say, yes, indeed, we are taking guests. Tell me about blank, right? They say, tell me, what do you want to talk about? Or I even got just a yes. Someone said yes. So then I get to respond to them. You just get all kinds of great engagement and responses, and it starts the conversation. Okay, so that is the super simple email guesting request script. Try it. You'll love it, I swear. And again, listen to the next episode where I'm going to tell you on how you respond, because it's super simple how you respond. And then also the email you send, the email number 2, if you aren't getting responses from some people, right? Because you don't just give up, you follow up, you send more than one email. So what's the next email look like if there's no response from the party? Anyway, and here's the email number one last time. Podcast host. Podcast host. I found your podcast name, podcast, and you have a great show. Are you looking for an interesting guest to be on the show? ? If so, what are the next steps? ? Thanks. Sign off with your name. It is that simple. Don't add any extra words. Okay, give it a try. Let me know what you think. Listen in for the next episode.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Table Rush Talk Show. For resources to help you sell your stuff, go to belove.media/resources. That's belove.media/resources. And be sure to subscribe, comment, 5-star, and share. Thank you again for listening.